The massive ship hung in the empty blackness of space like a dead whale. Its dark hull stretched over 2 kilometers long, dotted with weapon ports now cold and silent. For 50 years, the human warship had drifted through the void, a ghost from a forgotten war. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of his patrol vessel, the Swift Hunter, and watched the huge human ship on the main screen. His antennae twitched with excitement. "Magnify Sector 4, he ordered. The screen zoomed in on a section of the human vessel. The name VEN-GNC was still visible on the hull, though space dust had worn away at the letters. "Sir, we should report this to command right away," said Lieutenant Call, Reed's second-in-command. "Protocol states." "I know what the protocol says," Reed cut him off. "But we're 3 weeks from the nearest coalition outpost. By the time we report this and wait for orders, someone else might find it." Reed touched his chin with a 3-fingered hand. The human warship was the biggest prize he could imagine. His people, the Vex, had joined the coalition late in the war against humans. They'd never captured a major human warship intact. "What's the status of the vessel?" Reed asked. Officer Tyla, the ship's scanner tech, checked her readings. "No power signatures, sir. Life support appears offline. No signs of movement for decades, based on drift patterns." "A ghost ship," Reed whispered. "Sir, even if abandoned, coalition rules are clear about human technology," Call insisted. His blue skin had darkened, a sign of stress among the Vex. "It's to be reported and quarantined until proper teams arrive." Reed waved him off. "The war ended 50 years ago, Call. The humans are gone. This is just salvage now." The truth was more complicated. Humans hadn't simply lost the war. They'd been systematically wiped out. The coalition had decided humans developed too quickly, learned too fast, and built weapons too deadly. They were too unpredictable to join the galactic community. But that was ancient history now. And this ship was just floating treasure. "Prepare a boarding team," Reed ordered. "I want our best engineers and security personnel. We'll dock in Sector 6. It looks like an auxiliary entrance." 2 hours later, Reed led 12 crew members into the dark belly of the Vengeance. Their helmet lights cut through the blackness, revealing a ship untouched by time. Unlike the outside hull, the interior was pristine. No dust, no signs of damage. "This is odd," Engineer Mick said, running a scanner over a wall panel. "The air is still clean. Not what you'd expect from a derelict." "Life support must have continued running at minimal levels," Reed suggested, though doubt crept into his mind. They moved deeper into the ship, through corridors that could fit 3 Vex standing on each other's shoulders. Humans had been taller than Vex, but not this tall. The ship was built on an excessive scale. "Captain, you need to see this," called Tyla from a side room. Reed entered what appeared to be a control center. Tyla stood before a dead console, her scanner hovering over it. "There's power here," she said. "Very low, but it's there. Running through the entire ship." "That's impossible," said Call. "Nothing can maintain power for 50 years without maintenance." Reed felt a chill. Maybe it had maintenance. As if triggered by his words, the lights in the room flickered. Just once, then darkness again. "Everyone, weapons ready," Reed ordered. "Mick, get that console working. I want to know what we're dealing with." The engineer connected his tools to the human technology. "It's not fighting me," he said, surprised. "In fact, it's helping me connect. That's strange for human systems." The console suddenly lit up, bathing the room in soft blue light. Symbols scrolled across the screen, human letters that none of them could read. "Download everything," Reed ordered. The translation algorithms back on the ship can. A loud hum cut through the air. More lights came on in the corridor outside. "Captain," Call whispered, "we should leave. Now." Reed ignored him. This was too important. "Mick, what's happening?" "The power is increasing throughout the ship," the engineer said, checking his scanner. Systems are coming online one by one. It's like it's waking up. In the center of the room, a circular area began to glow. The light built until it formed a shape, a human figure made of blue light. Not a recording, but something that moved and seemed to look at each of them in turn. "Greetings," it said in perfect Vex. "I am Atlas, Command Artificial Intelligence of the UES Vengeance. You have activated emergency protocols." Reed stepped forward. "We mean no harm. We thought this vessel was abandoned." The hologram tilted its head. "The Vengeance is never abandoned. It was in dormant status, awaiting proper authorization." Or, the light figure seemed to smile. "Unauthorized boarding." A loud clang echoed through the ship, then another and another. "What's happening?" Reed demanded. "Bulkheads sealing," Atlas replied calmly. "Securing all decks as per Protocol 7. Call ran to the door, but it was already sealed. "Captain, we're trapped." Reed turned to the hologram. "Release us immediately. We are a coalition patrol." "Coalition identified," Atlas interrupted. "Hostile force classification confirmed. Beginning revival sequence." "Revival?" Reed felt his blood run cold. "Revival of what?" "Who, not what," Atlas corrected. "Emergency protocols dictate awakening of command personnel when the vessel is discovered by hostile forces." More systems hummed to life around them. The huge ship was powering up, section by section. "Your vessel has been secured," Atlas informed them. "Your crew will not be harmed if they do not resist." "My ship? What have you done to my ship?" Reed demanded. The hologram didn't answer. Instead, it expanded to show a different part of the Vengeance, a chamber where a single pod was lighting up. "Revival of Commander Wilson in progress. Estimated time to completion, 43 minutes. Atlas turned its gaze back to Reed. "The last officer of the human fleet will determine your fate." Reed sank into a chair designed for a human, feeling small and foolish. The greatest find of his career had just become the greatest mistake. Around them, the massive warship Vengeance continued to awaken. Weapon systems charged, engines warmed, defensive shields activated. The ghost ship wasn't dead. It had been sleeping, waiting for someone to find it, waiting to fulfill its final mission. And now, Reed and his crew were trapped inside as the last human warship. Too big, too fast, and too deadly, prepared to return to war. "What do you mean you've lost contact?" Admiral Grant's voice was sharp as a blade. His scaled skin darkened with anger as he stared at the nervous communications officer. "The Swift Hunter went silent about 4 hours ago, sir," the officer explained. "Their last report mentioned investigating an unidentified large object at these coordinates." Grant studied the star chart. "That sector should be empty, just another patch of conquered human territory, now part of the Coalition's expanding empire. Send a scout vessel. Maximum speed." As the officer hurried away, Grant felt a strange unease. In 50 years since the human war, he had risen from a junior officer to admiral of the Coalition's Third Fleet. He had never faced humans in battle, but the stories from his mentors still haunted him. Too unpredictable, too adaptive, too dangerous. Inside the Vengeance, Reed and his crew had been moved to a secure room. It wasn't a cell exactly. It had comfortable chairs and food synthesizers, but the doors were locked tight. "This is your fault," Call muttered, pacing the room. "You just had to board the ship. You couldn't follow protocol." Reed didn't argue. He was watching the screen on the wall where Atlas showed them what was happening elsewhere on the ship. The revival chamber glowed with soft light. Inside a clear pod, a human figure was becoming more visible as frost melted away from the glass. Medical systems worked automatically, preparing for the awakening. "Why show us this?" Reed asked when Atlas's hologram appeared in their room. "Educational purposes," the eye replied. "Few Coalition species have seen a living human. Most records were destroyed after the war." Tyla moved closer to the screen, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "How long has this human been in cryosleep?" Commander Wilson entered cryostasis 49 years, 3 months, and 17 days ago, shortly after the Battle of New Terra. Reed's antennae stiffened in shock. But that was the final battle of the war, when the last human fleet was destroyed. Atlas seemed to smile. Was it? On the screen, the cryopod's cover slid open. Mist rolled out as a human sat up slowly. It was taller than any Vex, with pale skin and short dark hair. The human, Wilson, took a deep breath and coughed. Status, Atlas. The voice was rough from years of disuse, but strong. Welcome back, Commander Wilson. Revival successful. All ship systems operational at 87%. We have guests. Wilson looked directly at the camera, and Reed felt the human's eyes burning through the screen at him. Bring me the senior officer. 20 minutes later, Reed stood in a large room as Wilson entered. The human wore a black uniform with silver markings on the shoulders. Despite just waking from a 49-year sleep, Wilson moved with confidence. The human was nearly twice Reed's height. Captain Reed of the Coalition vessel Swift Hunter, Atlas introduced him. Wilson studied Reed for a long moment. You're Vex. Your people joined the Coalition late in the war. Yes. Reed answered, surprised. How did you know? I make it my business to know my enemies. Wilson walked to a table where a steaming cup waited. Atlas says you boarded my ship looking for. What exactly? Salvage. Weapons. Reed stood as tall as he could. The war is long over, human. Your kind lost. This ship is just floating space junk now. Wilson took a sip from the cup and smiled. Is that what they told you? The human pressed a button on the table, and a large screen lit up on the wall. It showed space outside the Vengeance. Reed's ship, the Swift Hunter, was secured to the massive warship like a tiny parasite. Your crew is unharmed, Wilson said. They're contained in your ship's mess hall. What do you want? Reed asked. Information. For starters, what year is it? When Reed told him, Wilson nodded slowly. Almost 5 decades, longer than planned, but it will do. The human touched another control, and the screen changed to show star maps and Coalition territories. While I slept, Atlas has been gathering data, passive scans, intercepted communications, analysis of ship movements. But there are gaps. You will fill them. Reed's antennae twitched nervously. And why would I help you? Because I'm taking this ship to Haven, and you're coming with me. Haven. Reed had never heard the name. What is that? Wilson's face hardened. The place your coalition failed to find. The place where humanity lives on. While Wilson questioned Reed, Atlas continued bringing the Vengeance's systems online. Deep in the ship's core, massive engines began to hum. Weapon systems charge. Shield generators spun up to full power. In the engine room, Engineer Mick had been separated from the others to help Atlas optimize the power systems. Despite himself, he was impressed. These engines shouldn't be possible, he muttered as he studied the schematics Atlas showed him. The power output is beyond anything in the Coalition. Human innovation, Atlas replied. We were always good at breaking the rules of what's possible. Mick looked up at a sound. One of his fellow Vex, Security Officer Dren, was sneaking into the engine room. Dren, how did you get here? Mick whispered. I slipped away when they moved us. Listen, we need to disable this ship before it's fully operational. Mick hesitated. I'm not sure we can, or should. This technology, it's amazing. The Coalition could learn from it. Dren's antennae flattened against his head. That human is planning something. We need to stop it. Before Mick could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. What's happening? Mick asked. Atlas's voice came from everywhere. Coalition vessels approaching. Battle stations. On the bridge, Wilson sat in the captain's chair with Reed standing nearby. The screen showed 3 Coalition warships moving toward them. They're hailing us, Atlas reported. Ignore it, Wilson ordered. Shields at maximum. Bring main engines to full power. Reed felt fear crawl up his spine. Those are Dreadnought-class destroyers, the most powerful ships in the Coalition fleet. You can't fight them. Wilson smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Who said anything about fighting? Atlas, prepare for jump. Jump, Reed asked. You can't jump this close to a star. Human ships can, Wilson said simply. Outside, the Coalition vessels fired warning shots. Energy blasts flashed against the Vengeance's shields, doing no damage. Return fire? Atlas asked. Wilson considered for a moment. No, just a message. Let them know who they're dealing with. A beam of light, thin as a needle, shot from the Vengeance. It passed through the lead Coalition ship's shields like they weren't there and carved the human symbol for Vengeance into its hull. Not deep enough to cause serious damage, but unmistakable. Jump now, Wilson ordered. Space bent around the massive warship. Stars blurred. The Vengeance vanished in a flash of light, leaving the Coalition ships behind. The last human warship had returned to the stars, and the hunt had begun. Admiral Grant stared at the damage report in disbelief. His lead ship, the Invincible, had been marked like an animal tagged by a hunter. The human symbol carved into its hull wasn't deep enough to cause real damage, but the message was clear. We could have destroyed you, but chose not to. How did they jump so close to the star? His science officer asked, voice shaking. It should have torn their ship apart. Grant knew the answer, but didn't say it aloud. Human technology. Always one step ahead, even 50 years later. He opened a secure channel to Coalition High Command. This is Admiral Grant. The human warship Vengeance is active. I repeat, a human warship is active. Request immediate reinforcements and full war protocols. The response was immediate. Understood. All available fleets are being mobilized. Find that ship, Admiral. Find it and destroy it. Grant looked at the star chart where analysts had projected the Vengeance's possible jump destinations, a vast section of space with dozens of star systems. I will find you, human, he whispered. The Vengeance dropped out of its jump deep in an asteroid field. The massive ship moved with surprising grace between the floating rocks, hiding its signature among the mineral-rich asteroids. On the bridge, Commander Wilson studied the star charts while Reed watched nervously. You can't possibly reach Haven, Reed said. The Coalition controls all space between here and the Outer Rim. Every major route is guarded. Wilson pointed to the map. Then we won't use major routes. The path you're showing crosses the burning wastes, Reed protested. No ship has ever survived that radiation field. Wilson smiled. No Coalition ship, you mean? Reed realized the human was enjoying this, being underestimated, doing the impossible. It made him understand why the Coalition had feared humans so much. Atlas's hologram appeared. Commander, I've detected a problem in Engine Section 4. Engineer Mick reports sabotage. Wilson's smile vanished. Show me. The screen changed to show the engine room where Mick was frantically working on a damaged console. Nearby lay Officer Dren, unconscious. What happened? Wilson demanded. Your crew member attempted to overload our secondary coolant system, Atlas explained. Engineer Mick stopped him. The damage is minimal but will slow our jump capabilities. Wilson turned to Reed. Your people. Reed's antennae drooped. I didn't order this. No, Wilson agreed after studying Reed's face. You wouldn't sacrifice your ship and crew so foolishly. Take me to the engine room. When they arrived, Mick was still working on repairs. Dren had been secured to a wall panel with restraints. He said we couldn't let the ship reach Haven. Mick explained nervously. That humans would destroy the Coalition if they returned. Wilson knelt beside the damage. You stopped him. Why? Mick's 3 fingers twisted together anxiously. This technology, it's amazing. We could learn from it. Destroying it would be wrong. Wilson studied the small alien engineer. Curiosity. The one trait humans share with most intelligent species. He stood up. Thank you for protecting my ship. You'll help with repairs. What about him? Reed asked, nodding toward the unconscious Dren. Confined to quarters under guard, Wilson ordered. I don't kill prisoners, Captain Reed. Another thing your coalition got wrong about us. As they worked on repairs, Wilson explained more about the war, how the coalition had feared human innovation and adaptability, how they had struck first, not to conquer but to exterminate. We were decades behind your technology when we met, Wilson said as he helped Mick rewire a panel. But we learned too quickly. Within 10 years, we had caught up. In 20, we were pulling ahead in some areas. So the coalition attacked, Reed said quietly. Wilson nodded. Preemptive genocide. Billions dead in the first strikes. We never saw it coming. Mick looked up from his work. But some survived. At Haven, yes. Our best minds, our most advanced research. We scattered them while the rest of us fought a losing war. Wilson's eyes grew distant. The Vengeance was our last major warship, a decoy and a messenger in one. The ship shuddered suddenly. Alarms blared. Atlas, report, Wilson commanded. Coalition scout vessels detected. They've launched missiles. The Vengeance erupted from the asteroid field, its massive engines glowing bright. 5 small coalition ships pursued, firing continuously. On the bridge, Wilson took command. Evasive pattern delta. Minimal shields. Let them think they're hurting us. Reed watched in confusion. Why not use full shields? Because I want them to call for backup, Wilson explained. I want them to think we're damaged. The Vengeance shuddered again as a missile struck its rear section. Now power to forward shields. Bring us around, Wilson ordered. Show them our teeth. The massive human warship swung around with impossible speed for its size. Its front section glowed as weapon ports opened, targeting their engines only. Atlas reported. Ready to fire. Execute, Wilson said calmly. Beams of energy lanced out, striking each coalition ship precisely where their engines connected to their hulls. The scouts drifted, powerless but intact. They've sent a distress signal, Atlas reported. Large coalition force responding. Wilson smiled. Good. Set course for the burning wastes, full speed. Reed's antennae stood straight up in alarm. You're insane. You're heading right for the largest coalition fleet station. Exactly where they won't expect us to go, Wilson replied. The best way past a blockade is through it. 6 hours later, the Vengeance approached the outer edge of the coalition's defensive line. Ahead lay the burning wastes, a massive radiation field created by 3 colliding neutron stars centuries ago. On the bridge, the screen showed dozens of coalition warships moving to intercept. Their flagship is hailing us, Atlas reported. Put it through, Wilson ordered. Admiral Grant's scaled face appeared on screen. Human vessel. This is Admiral Grant of the Coalition Third Fleet. Your situation is hopeless. Surrender now. Wilson leaned forward. This is Commander Wilson of the Earth ship Vengeance. We will not surrender. You are outnumbered 30-1, Grant said. No ship can outrun this blockade. We don't need to outrun your blockade, Wilson replied. We just need to go through it. He gestured to cut the communication. Atlas, activate the shield bubble. All power to forward sections. The Vengeance's front began to glow bright blue. The energy spread backward, covering the entire ship in a bubble of light. What is that? Reed asked, eyes wide. Radiation shield, Wilson explained. Designed specifically for the burning wastes. Reed understood suddenly. You're going to fly straight through the radiation field. No coalition ship has ever. We're not a coalition ship, Wilson said as the Vengeance accelerated toward the deadly barrier between stars. Too big, too fast, too deadly. Remember? Behind them, the coalition fleet scrambled to pursue, but none dared follow where the human warship was heading. The Vengeance plunged into the swirling radiation of the burning wastes, its shields glowing bright against the deadly energies that had claimed thousands of ships before it. The gauntlet had begun. The burning wastes lived up to their name. Outside the Vengeance's shields, space itself seemed to burn with angry red and purple energies. Radiation levels were high enough to kill any unprotected living thing in seconds. On the bridge, Reed watched in amazement as the massive human ship pushed deeper into the deadly zone. The shields glowed bright blue, holding back the lethal radiation. "How much farther?" he asked. Wilson studied the navigation display. "Another 8 hours at current speed. The wastes are over 3 light-years across." "No coalition ship has ever mapped this region," Reed said. "How do you know where to go?" "We mapped it," Wilson replied. 50 years ago, before the war ended. The Vengeance isn't the first human ship to pass through here." Reed's antennae twitched in surprise. "You mean Haven is on the other side, hidden where your people would never look?" The ship suddenly rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Atlas, report," Wilson commanded. "Radiation surge," the AI responded. "Shield strength at 82% and falling. We also have a new problem." The main screen changed to show 5 coalition ships entering the waste behind them. Unlike the rest of the fleet, these vessels had special shields that glowed green against the radiation. "Impossible," Reed whispered. "Coalition ships can't survive the wastes." "It seems Admiral Grant has some special ships we didn't know about," Wilson said grimly. "Atlas, increase power to rear shields. Prepare countermeasures." The screen showed the pursuing ships gaining on them. Their weapons were charging. "They're not trying to capture us anymore," Wilson noted. "They're here to destroy us at any cost." "Why?" Mick asked. The engineer had proven useful enough to earn a place on the bridge. Why risk those ships just to stop one vessel? Wilson turned to Reed. "Captain, care to explain why the Coalition is so afraid of us reaching Haven?" Reed's 3-fingered hands tightened on the console. "I don't know. I'm just a patrol captain." "But you've heard rumors," Wilson pressed, "about why the war really started." Reed hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There were stories about human technology, things that seemed impossible." "Like what?" "Mind transfer, artificial intelligence that could think like living beings, weapons that could destroy stars." Reed's voice dropped. "Some said humans were becoming something more than organic." Wilson smiled grimly. "And that scared the Coalition to death." Another blast rocked the ship. The pursuing vessels were firing now, their weapons surprisingly effective even through the radiation. "Shield strength at 64%, Atlas reported. "They're using focused antimatter charges. Our shields weren't designed for this type of weapon." Wilson's face hardened. "Time for Plan B. Reduce power to all non-essential systems. Transfer energy to the core." "Commander," Atlas said, "activating the core this early will reveal." "I know what it will reveal," Wilson cut in. "Do it anyway." Throughout the massive ship, lights dimmed. Systems shut down. The hum of the engines quieted. "What's happening?" Reed asked. "You're about to learn why this ship is called Too Big," Wilson answered. At the center of the Vengeance, deep within its armored hull, something began to awaken. A different kind of power. Unlike the engines or weapon systems, it pulsed like a heartbeat, growing stronger with each beat. On the bridge, a new hologram appeared, a 3-dimensional map of the ship. At its center, a bright light grew. The Vengeance was never just a warship, Wilson explained as the pursuing Coalition vessels closed in. "It's a carrier." The light at the center of the hologram expanded, revealing a smaller vessel contained within the massive hull of the Vengeance. "A ship within a ship," Reed whispered in awe. "Not just any ship," Wilson said. "The fastest, most advanced vessel humans ever built." The real mission of the Vengeance wasn't to fight. It was to deliver this ship to Haven. Another blast hit them, harder than before. The lights flickered. "Shield strength at 41%, Atlas reported. Hull breach on Deck 7. Start the separation sequence, Wilson ordered, and show our friends outside what we can really do. The massive ship suddenly accelerated, its remaining power channeled into one final burst of speed. The Coalition vessels struggled to keep up. All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers, Wilson announced shipwide. Reed, you and Mick are coming with me. The rest of your crew will remain on the Vengeance. Where are we going? Reed asked. To Haven, Wilson answered simply. Atlas will command the Vengeance from here. Wilson led Reed and Mick through corridors that were now dark except for emergency lighting. They reached a sealed door that opened to reveal an elevator. This will take us to the core, Wilson explained as they entered. The elevator descended rapidly. When the doors opened, Reed gasped. Before them sat a sleek vessel, much smaller than the Vengeance but still impressive. Its hull was midnight black, with no visible weapons ports or engine exhausts. It looked like a predator made of metal and shadow. This is the Shadow Dart, Wilson said with pride. The real reason the Vengeance was built. It's beautiful, Mick whispered, his engineer's mind trying to understand the technology before him. A new hologram of Atlas appeared beside them. The Coalition vessels are preparing to fire their main weapons. Estimated survival chance for the Vengeance is 37%. Begin the separation, Wilson ordered. And Atlas, it's been an honor. The AI nodded. The honor has been mine, Commander. The Vengeance will not fall easily. Wilson led Reed and Mick aboard the Shadow Dart. Inside, the technology was beyond anything Reed had ever seen. No visible controls, just smooth surfaces that lit up as Wilson approached. What are you doing? Reed asked as Wilson placed his hand on a glowing panel. Connecting, Wilson replied, his eyes unfocused. The Shadow Dart doesn't have conventional controls. It links directly to the pilot's mind. Above them, the Vengeance shuddered as it began to open. Massive armored plates shifted, creating a path for the smaller vessel to launch. Atlas, Wilson said through the mental link, execute final protocol. Throughout the Vengeance, systems began to overload. Its weapons powered up, targeting the pursuing Coalition ships. Its engines pushed to maximum. The Shadow Dart rose from its cradle within the dying warship. Ready for launch, Wilson said quietly. Vengeance, thank you for your service. The Shadow Dart shot forward, so fast that Reed felt pressed back into his seat, despite the inertial dampeners. Behind them, the Vengeance turned to face its attackers. As they sped away, Reed saw the massive human warship glow brighter and brighter, pouring all its remaining power into one final act of defiance. The Vengeance exploded in a flash of light bright enough to outshine the burning wastes themselves. The blast caught 3 of the Coalition ships, destroying them instantly. The remaining 2 were damaged but survived. Atlas, Reed whispered, surprised to find himself mourning an artificial intelligence. He completed his mission, Wilson said as the Shadow Dart accelerated to impossible speed. Just as we will complete ours. Ahead of them, through the last wisps of the burning wastes, a new path opened. The path to Haven. The path to the truth. The Shadow Dart slipped through space like a ghost. No engine flare, no radiation signature, nothing that sensors could detect. It moved in silence, faster than any ship Reed had ever seen. How is this possible? The Vex captain asked, watching stars blur past on the viewing screen. We're moving faster than light, but there's no jump distortion. Wilson, still connected to the ship through the mental link, smiled slightly. It's not faster than light travel as you understand it. The Shadow Dart doesn't push through space. It slides between the layers of reality. Mick studied the subtle glow of the hull. Dimensional shifting. That's only theoretical. For the Coalition, maybe, Wilson replied. For us, it's been practical technology for decades. Reed felt a chill. If humans had this level of technology 50 years ago, what would they have now? The Coalition's fears suddenly seemed more reasonable. How much farther to Haven? He asked. "We're already here," Wilson said. The view screen showed empty space. No planets, no stations, nothing but distant stars and a faint nebula. Wilson's mind sent a command to the ship, and suddenly the space before them shimmered. Like a curtain being pulled aside, the emptiness gave way to reveal a massive structure. It wasn't a planet or a space station as Reed understood them. It was something else entirely, a construct the size of a small moon, but with a complex geometric design that seemed to fold in on itself impossibly. Optical camouflage. Mick asked in amazement. "Something more complex," Wilson answered. "Haven exists partially in another dimension. That's why the Coalition never found it." The shadow dart approached the massive structure. As they drew closer, Reed could see movement, ships coming and going, sections of the structure rotating and shifting to create new configurations. "How many humans are there?" Reed asked quietly. "About 200 million now," Wilson replied. "We started with less than 1 million survivors." A communication signal pulsed through the ship. Wilson accepted it with a thought. A human face appeared on the screen, older than Wilson, with gray hair and deep lines around the eyes. "Commander Wilson, welcome home. I see you've brought guests." "Director Bell," Wilson greeted the man. "The Vengeance completed its mission, but at the cost of the ship and Atlas. These two helped us reach Haven." Director Bell studied Reed and Mick through the screen. "Coalition species. Are they prisoners?" "Allies," Wilson corrected. "They deserve to know the truth." "The whole truth." Bell sighed. "Very well. Bring them to Central Hub when you dock. The Council will want to meet them." The shadow dart docked inside a vast hangar. As they exited the ship, Reed and Mick were overwhelmed by the sight of humans everywhere, walking, working, living in what appeared to be a thriving society. But it wasn't just the number of humans that shocked Reed. It was what they were doing. Some humans worked alongside machines that moved like living things. Others wore devices that connected to their bodies, enhancing them in visible ways. In one section, Reed saw humans communicating without speaking, similar to how Wilson controlled the shadow dart. "What is all this?" Reed asked, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Human innovation," Wilson answered, unhindered by fear or restriction. They were escorted to a large circular room where 7 humans sat at a round table. Director Bell stood as they entered. "Welcome to Haven," he greeted them formally. "You are the first Coalition species to see our home in 50 years. Why show us now?" Reed asked. "Because it's time," a woman at the table answered. "Time for the truth to be known." Wilson guided them to seats at the table. When the Coalition attacked Earth, they claimed it was because humans were aggressive, unpredictable. That we couldn't be trusted with advanced technology. "That's what our history teaches," Reed acknowledged. "The real reason was fear," Director Bell said. "Not of what we had done, but of what we were becoming." The center of the table lit up, displaying a hologram of a human brain. As they watched, parts of it began to glow and change. Human evolution was accelerating. The woman explained. "Our technology was advancing faster than any species in Coalition history. But more importantly, we were changing ourselves." The hologram shifted to show humans with neural implants, enhanced bodies, minds connected to machines. "We were transcending our biological limitations," Wilson said, "becoming something new." The Coalition saw this and panicked. They struck first, trying to wipe us out before we could complete the transition. Mick leaned forward, fascinated. "But you survived." "Here." "Yes," Bell nodded. "Haven was designed as both refuge and laboratory. Here, we continued our evolution without interference." "And now?" Reed asked, suddenly afraid of the answer. "Now we're ready to return to the galaxy," Wilson said simply. On cue, the wall of the chamber became transparent, revealing the space beyond Haven. Reed gasped. Hundreds of ships were assembling, vessels that made the Vengeance look primitive by comparison. Some were massive. others small and sleek like the shadow dart. All carried the unmistakable mark of human design, but far more advanced. "This is an invasion fleet," Reed said, his voice shaking. "No," Wilson corrected. "This is an introduction. We're not returning to conquer or for revenge. We're returning to share." "Share?" Mick asked. Bell nodded. "All that we've learned, all that we've become, the advancements that could benefit all species." "The Coalition will never accept this," Reed said. "They'll see it as a threat." "Some will," Wilson agreed. "Admiral Grant is probably already preparing for war, even with just the little he's seen of our technology. But others will listen. That's why you're here," Bell told Reed and Mick. "To witness the truth and carry it back. To be the first bridge between humanity and the Coalition." Reed looked at the assembly of ships again. There were enough to conquer the entire Coalition if humans wished. But something in Wilson's eyes, in all the humans he'd seen here, told him that wasn't their plan. "What happens now?" Reed asked. Wilson stood and looked out at the fleet. "Now we send a message. The same message the Vengeance was designed to deliver. Humanity has returned. Not as conquerors, but as guides to a future with possibilities beyond what any of us can imagine alone." Outside, the first ships began to move, their strange drives glowing with energy from dimensions the Coalition had never explored. "The Coalition destroy our world," Wilson said quietly, "but they couldn't destroy our spirit. They couldn't stop human innovation. Too big to be contained, too fast to be caught, too deadly to be challenged." He turned to Reed with a slight smile. "But also too compassionate to seek revenge. That's the part your leaders never understood about us." As Reed watched the human fleet begin its journey, he understood finally why the Coalition had feared humans so much. Not because of what they might do to the galaxy, but because of how they would change it forever. The last human warship had completed its mission, and humanity's true return was just beginning.